Hey everybody, so this is the first video in a series about the journey to become a Kubestronaut in 2026, and specifically this video is focused on the CKA exam, which is the Certified Kubernetes Administrator. It is the first exam that I took in my 30-day journey to Kubestronaut. So if you look at the Kubestronaut program website here, you can see that they just have them listed in this order of CKA, CKAD, CKS, KCNA, and KCSA. And that's actually the order that I took mine in. You don't have to take them in that order. Uh, I think they just put it like that alphabetically. KCNA and the KCSA are both associate level or kind of beginner level exams. They're multiple choice questions. The CKA and the other three are performance based. So with the CKA, you will get basically 2 hours and you get 15 to 20 questions, somewhere around there. And it is performance based. It's a lot of knowing how to manage a cluster, set up a cluster, troubleshoot a cluster. You need to be familiar with Linux services, how to troubleshoot Linux services. A couple tips on the CKA and just all the Kubernetes performance exams in general. Um, I've heard mixed reviews on the Killer Shell Simulator. My experience with all three of those exams was that the simulator was harder than the actual exam. That's typically what I hear. I have heard a couple people with the CKS that have mentioned that it was a little bit different, but I don't want to get too off track. With the specifically focused on the CKA, I have a background in DevOps, Linux, Docker. I work a lot with containers. I work a lot with Docker containers on a daily basis, with Docker deployments, Docker Swarm. But I do have a background in Kubernetes. Worked with it for several years. That being said, I don't work with Kubernetes on a daily basis in my current role. So, what did I do to prepare for the CKA? And basically, what I did for the CKA, I feel like set me up for the rest of the exams as well. So, the first thing that I did for the CKA is I took this Certified Kubernetes Administrator with Practice Tests course on Udemy. Now, this course is actually from Code Cloud Training, so you don't have to go uh, through Udemy. You could go directly through codecloud.com and you could sign up and take the courses here. They have some great learning paths. So they have a whole learning path for the Kubestronaut program where they recommend going for the KCNA, CKA, the CKAD, the KCSA. So they recommend putting them together in bunches where the KCNA and the CKA are kind of similar as far as what they're covering. But either way, you can go either way. I would highly recommend this course. What I like about Code Cloud is they do have these interactive playgrounds. So when you take the Udemy course, you get access to these playgrounds. So it's very similar to Killer Coda scenarios, um, and kind of more focused on what's on the exam. So I would highly recommend this course. It's got 88,000 ratings, 4.7 stars at the time of this. Really great course. I did this. It is about 26, 27 hours of content, which is a lot of content, along with the practice questions, but it gives you a really great overview of Kubernetes and really does a deep dive into everything that you need to know for the CKA. The next up is Killer Coda, obviously. So for Killer Coda, I did all of the scenarios, pretty much did all of the scenarios for the CKA. Obviously, the ones from Kim, he's the creator of the official Killer Shell exam simulator. So his scenarios are really great. These other scenarios are going to be helpful for you as well. And I will give you a tip. From my experience, there are some things between the CKA, well, really all three of these exams have some very similar content. The CKA and the CKS specifically, I want to talk to because what I noticed in taking these is there are certain things that you're going to want to know really well. So if I'm looking at here, API server crash and misconfigured, those are good to know. These misconfigurations are really good to know and really good to understand. Ingress is super important. You're going to have an ingress, multiple one or more ingress questions on all three of these exams. You can almost guarantee it. You're going to know how to create an ingress or troubleshoot an ingress. Um, Network policies is another big one as well. Network policies really tripped me up in the beginning. I didn't really take the time to understand and try to learn network policies, and it really kind of hurt me on the CKA. Even though I did pass, there were some network policy questions that I struggled with or I skipped over. So I would highly recommend really honing in on these network policy scenarios for the CKA and also for the CKS. The CKAD, you're not going to have to know as much with these how to necessarily create network policies. You might have to do something like learn how to implement policy. RBAC is another thing. Understanding the scheduler. That was a big one. That is actually one of the questions that I do remember that tripped me up. Had something to do with scheduling and kind of manually scheduling pods specifically. So I would definitely learn about scheduling priority, scheduling pod affinity, playing around with breaking the scheduler, bringing it back up, understanding really the underlying container runtime, right? Like when the scheduler is broken, you really have to know how to use Docker or uh, you know, try whichever one you're going to have installed. So those are really big ones. And then cluster setup, cluster upgrade, and cluster joining, along with certificate management. So understanding how to work with kubeadm. You don't have to be an expert, but do be aware that on all of these exams, they are using kubeadm to set up your environments. So my experience with the actual exam is that each question is going to be on a different each question is going to be focused on a different cluster, right? So you're going to be SSHing into basically a different environment on each question. Um, so that's just something to be aware of. And typically they're going to be two node clusters. You're going to have a control plane and a worker node. So just be aware of how that is set up. So obviously you really have to understand static pods. What is a static pod? How do you create a static pod? How do you troubleshoot a static pod? Um, Things like starting your services, um, you know, doing, when you make updates to Cube API server manifest, for example, running a systemctl daemon reload and then a systemctl restart kubelet. For me, that's the best way, the fastest way to kind of get everything restarted and make sure that my things are working properly. So I did just want to show you my exam results here. I did get a 74. It's a 66 needed to pass. I got a 74. Again, it was the first one that I took, and there was a few things that tripped me up, like network policy, some of the RBAC stuff. I would say really important with RBAC, understanding, definitely go through these scenarios and understand not just how to create the roles and the role bindings. You do need to know the difference between role binding, a cluster role binding, a role and a cluster role. That's a very important distinction. But also, how do you test? How do you test that out, right? So let me change this here. For example, if I create a role in Kubernetes and I create like a service account, you're going to want to be familiar with the command can or auth can I. Know how to use this. So, kube control auth can I get deploy. And then for like a service account, it's going to be some service account default, for example. So that's going to be the service account name default in the default namespace. I could be getting that slightly wrong. You want to look that up, but this is really important. You're going to want to know um, how to do this, how to test your changes. That's another big thing that you really need to hone in on for all of these exams is knowing how to verify the changes that you've made, especially with RBAC. So those are some big tips that I've got for right now. If there's anything else specific that you would like me to cover, please feel free to reach out. Leave it in the comments. Let me know. I'd love to hear your feedback on what you think. Again, this was the first Kubernetes exam that I took. I probably studied for a solid 2 or 3 weeks, I would say at least, of pretty pretty regular practice every day. Went through all of the killer coda scenarios. Also did both sessions on the killer shell simulator. So when you purchase your exam voucher, you do get 2 sessions on the simulator. And for the CKA and the CKS, those are 2 separate sessions. So you'll get 2 separate sets of questions. The first, so basically there's simulator A and simulator B. Simulator A has one set of questions. Simulator B has a second set of questions. Very important that you do both of those simulators. Do not skip them. Do both of them. I did both of them. And I found that for me, one of them was, I think the second one I felt was harder than the first one. But having done both of those really prepared me for the CKA, gave me a really good foundation. So that's all for this video, and I will be making another video on the CKA, or I'm sorry, the next video in this series will be on the CKAD and my feedback and thoughts on that. So stay tuned.